Chapter 27. Okay, it's okay. Luo Qingtong wasn't very good at comforting people, but this little guy was crying so miserably in her arms, it seemed a bit unreasonable to leave him alone like this. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong patted the little boy's back and stuffed a few herbs she had picked before into his mouth. Chew a few times and then swallow. Okay. The boy nodded with tears in his eyes. He had just experienced a life and death situation, so hugging Luo Qingtong was like hugging his last life-saving straw. But even so, he still tried to force himself not to hug Luo Qingtong too tightly, so as not to interfere with Luo Qingtong's actions. Fairy sister, thank you. The smell of the herbs was very unpleasant. The little boy had been pampered since childhood, so he had never smelled such a strong smell. But even so, he didn't hesitate at all. He chewed up the herbs Luo Qingtong gave him and swallowed them. Then he carefully leaned against Luo Qingtong's arms and hugged her with his small hands. Luo Qingtong could feel his body trembling. He was obviously very scared, but he endured it and didn't cry out. He was so well behaved that Luo Qingtong couldn't immediately abandon him. Forget it, since she had already saved him, she might as well send the Buddha to the west. Give me the defensive spiritual tool on your body, she said to the little boy. There were too many pythons and they were desperately entangled. The drug in the little boy's body had already been neutralized, but there were still remnants in their bodies. She didn't know who wanted to kill him, but even if the smell of the drug had dissipated, the pythons would still go crazy for a while. Moreover, they were getting crazier and crazier. It seemed that the other party had already taken this little guy's detoxification situation into consideration. Luo Qingtong had to get rid of these pythons before they completely went crazy. Okay. The little boy didn't ask anything and directly took off all the defensive spiritual tools on his body, ready to give them to Luo Qingtong. He completely believed that Luo Qingtong was the girl who saved him from the mouth of the crazy pythons. If the other party really wanted to harm him, it would be fine if she didn't save him. Why bother? Fairy sister, here you go. He handed all the defensive spiritual tools in his hand to Luo Qingtong. There's no need for that. Take it. Do whatever I tell you to do later. Do you understand? Luo Qingtong's figure shuttled back and forth in the group of pythons. Her speed was very fast. Every landing point was perfect. One by one, the giant pythons rushed forward, but they were always just a hair's breadth away from biting her. So many pythons crisscrossing and crisscrossing, but they couldn't do anything to her. The little boy was dumbfounded. Fairy sister was too powerful. She must be God sent to save him. She must be. The little fellow looked at Luo Qingtong with admiration and nodded heavily at her words. Fairy sister, I will be obedient. Luo Qingtong didn't care about the little boy's address. Those pythons were getting faster and faster, and their berserk traces were getting more and more obvious. Originally, they were only rank 3 demonic beasts, but under the stimulation of the smell of the medicine, there was a tendency to transform into rank 4 demonic beasts. Even though she had the assistance of her eye technique, there were still pythons in front of her, forcing her to be unable to rush forward. If this continued, she would inevitably be trapped in the encirclement of the pythons, and be surrounded to death. Okay, now start throwing. Luo Qingtong set a location, and let the little boy in her arms throw the defensive spiritual tool in his hand. The little boy didn't hesitate. When Luo Qingtong said that location, he directly threw the defensive spiritual tool in his hand. He didn't even ask why Luo Qingtong did this, nor did he ask why those defensive spiritual tools didn't even have spiritual chi, so what was the use of throwing them out? The little boy wholeheartedly believed in Luo Qingtong. He believed that this fairy sister, who was sent by God to save him, would definitely save him. Chapter 28. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Luo Qingtong's figure shuttled back and forth in the midst of the berserk giant pythons. At this moment, her path forward had already been blocked by the increasingly berserk giant pythons. She could only rely on her eye technique to maneuver around the encirclement of the giant pythons. If someone were here at this moment, they would definitely be stunned by Luo Qingtong's movements. It wasn't too fast but too ingenious. One after another, giant pythons opened their ferocious mouths and attacked. Even a martial marquis expert would be flustered in the face of such an attack. In the end, they would be forced to stop by the giant pythons and use their strength to resist. However, Luo Qingtong's figure remained calm and unruffled. Even if the giant python's speed became faster and their aura became more and more berserk, and the space to dodge became smaller and smaller, she was still able to find a safe foothold in this continuous wave of berserk attacks. She just so happened to be able to avoid all the attacks. However, this scene wouldn't last for long. As the giant pythons became even more berserk, some of the giant pythons began to swarm forward without caring about whether they would hurt their companions. In this way, Luo Qingtong practically had no foothold to dodge. Fortunately, the task she had instructed the young man to do was more or less completed. When the last defensive spiritual weapon was thrown out, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly bloomed with a bloody glow. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. In the dark red glow of her eyes, the defensive spiritual weapons that were thrown out seemed to be restrained by an endless line. Finally, they completely converged into a huge array pattern. This pattern was extremely similar to the array that Yi Qianxian had set up when he was healing, but there were also obvious differences. Luo Qingtong had modified it a little so that this array had both the effect of concealment and the ability to trap and kill. At this moment, relying on the spiritual weapons thrown out by the young man to form the eye of the array, she had impressively succeeded in setting it up. The reason why she had chosen this array was entirely because Yi Qianxian had previously set it up with trees and terrain, and it had such a strong concealment effect. Luo Qingtong only had defensive spiritual weapons with no spiritual energy that she could use. Naturally, she couldn't set up an array that was too strong. And if it was too weak, it might not be useful against these giant pythons. Therefore, she had chosen this array formation. At this moment, Luo Qingtong still didn't know that she had done such a shocking thing. Yi Qianxian had set up a 6th-level array formation. An ordinary spirit array master might not be able to successfully set up a spirit array even if they were to follow the steps of the spirit array master. Luo Qingtong had only gone in and out once and she had set it up perfectly. Not only that, but she had also made changes. Such changes to the array formation. Furthermore, she had changed a 6th-level array formation. Now, the Xuanhuan singular chi formation's effect was close to that of a 7th grade formation. Although it wasn't the effect, it wasn't far away. If news of this were to spread, it would shake the entire world. Countless forces would flock here just to recruit her, a rare talent in array formations. Hold me tight. The moment the array formation was formed, Luo Qingtong shouted in a low voice. The young man, who had been holding her tightly, immediately used his hands and feet to hang on her body like a koala bear. At the same time, Luo Qingtong also let go of him and formed a seal with both hands. A force suddenly entered the main eye of the array formation at this moment. And the moment Luo Qingtong raised her hand, those giant pythons seemed to have foreseen danger and rushed towards her even more violently. Rumble. Chapter 29. Hiss. Amidst the violent hisses of the giant pythons, a huge formation diagram surged up and enveloped all the giant pythons around Luo Qingtong in an instant. Luo Qingtong carried the young boy and rushed out of the life gate of the formation. Behind her were countless rolling giant pythons and their bloody mouths. Bang! Luo Qingtong shot out a ray of light without looking back. The formation was instantly sealed after she rushed out. In an instant, the miserable hisses of the giant pythons were endless. Luo Qingtong didn't stay outside for too long. She leaped and flew away with the young boy. Although this formation was powerful, it was set up by a defensive spirit weapon that had no power. The energy needed to activate the formation was supported by the materials of the spirit weapon itself. It wouldn't be able to trap these giant pythons for long. However, it would be enough for them to leave as long as they could delay them for a while. The aura in the young boy's body had been removed. As long as they were far away from these giant pythons, they wouldn't chase after them. After a while they would disperse. A few breaths after Luo Qingtong left, swoosh. Yi Qianxian's figure instantly appeared in the sky above this dense forest. The silver-clothed, black-haired man stood in the air, as dignified and noble as an ancient god. The powerful aura lingered around his body. Wherever he passed, there were no sounds of insects or birds. It was as if the entire world had become silent with the appearance of this man. I'm a step late again. He focused his eyes and sensed the remaining rich aura in the surroundings, indicating that the young girl had just left. Yi Qianxian's eyes scanned the surroundings and finally fixed on the concealment formation that trapped the giant pythons. This formation had the effect of concealing and trapping, but after all, Luo Qingtong had secretly learned it from Yi Qianxian. Others might not be able to detect it, but how could Yi Qianxian not be able to? Sensing the aura of the formation hidden in the void, Yi Qianxian's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. This is the Xuanhuan Unity formation? No. It wasn't the Heaven and Earth Singular Chi Array. Although it was the Xuanhuan Singular Chi formation's aura, there was obviously a huge difference. The aura emitted by this array formation was much stronger than the Xuanhuan Unison array. Was this done by that woman? Yi Qianxian's eyes flickered. He thought that he had overestimated that woman. But he didn't expect that every time he chased after her, she would give him such a huge surprise. The xianhuan singular qi array was a level 6 array formation that he had created himself. Although it was just a boring work, there were less than 10 people in the world who could successfully set it up. Apart from himself, everyone else was an array formation grandmaster. But Luo Qingtong only went in and out once, and she actually saw through his array. Moreover, he had even modified it and arranged it. What kind of terrifying talent was this? Could it be that apart from being a weapon refiner, that woman was also a spirit array master? Regardless of whether it was an armament master or a spiritual array master, many forces and cultivators would scramble for them. Their statuses on the continent were extremely honorable. But those who could be good at both could be counted on one's fingers. Yi Qianxian searched through his memories, but he couldn't find anything that matched the characteristics of Luo Qingtong's cultivation. This woman was really a mystery. This was the first time that Yi Qianxian had a strong curiosity about a person. He really couldn't see through that woman. Just as Yi Qianxian was frowning slightly, with a boom, the spiritual weapon in the array formation below shattered. The array formation, which had lost its core, suddenly exploded. After nearly half of the giant pythons trapped in it had killed each other, the remaining dozens of giant pythons rushed out. Chapter 30. Hiss hiss hiss. The violent hissing sound seemed to resound in every part of the air. There were giant pythons in all directions. That huge body, either bent or stretched, rushed towards Yi Qianxian. Above the huge python head, there was a fierce and bloodthirsty look. Yi Qianxian looked at it indifferently, the expression on his face did not even change. Swish. It was as if a cool breeze blew past. In the next second, bang bang bang. The continuous sound of explosions resounded. Those giant pythons that rushed over in an instant seemed to be imprisoned by an invisible big hand frozen in midair. Blood mist filled the sky. The bodies of those giant pythons, one by one, exploded. In just an instant, the sky was filled with rippling blood flowers. Dozens of giant pythons, which were violent enough to tear a peak martial marquis into pieces, were all destroyed in one breath. Swish. In the blood mist that filled the sky, Yi Qianxian's body was not tainted by a speck of dust. Like a peerless god high above, he looked at everything in front of him with cold and indifferent eyes. He paused for a moment, and then disappeared into the void under the backdrop of the blood rain and flesh flowers that filled the sky. In the air, only the extremely strong smell of blood was left, indicating that there had been an extreme massacre here. Swish swish swish. Luo Qingtong's figure swept through the dense forest. After dodging and activating the array just now, her physical strength was also slightly exhausted. Just as she swept to a safe place and was about to put down the little boy in her arms, she suddenly smelled a trace of blood in the air. Luo Qingtong suddenly lowered her head, and the delicate little face of the little boy in her arms, which was pale due to the loss of blood, bumped into her eyes. "You're injured?" Luo Qingtong frowned. Just now, she was only focused on carrying him away and did not notice that the little guy in her arms was injured. She put him down and found that the little boy's injury was on his shoulder, which was leaning against her waist. If it wasn't for this little fellow blocking the attack, she reckoned that the one who would be injured would be her. Luo Qingtong carefully recalled what had happened. She recalled the moment when they had rushed out of the array, those giant pythons had instantly gone berserk. Could it be that he was injured at that time? The wound on the little boy's shoulder was in a hideous tearing shape, and there was still a sharp pain on it. His consciousness was on the verge of blurring. If Luo Qingtong had not discovered it in time, he would have died silently just like that. "Seriously? Why didn't you scream when you were injured?" Luo Qingtong quickly put her down. With her sharp senses, if the other party had cried out or groaned when he was injured, she would have definitely noticed it. Just as she said this, she heard the faintly discernible murmurs from the unconscious youth. "No. You can't scream. We'll distract. Immortal. Sister. Can't." This string of words was completely unintentional. Jun Yunqing's hand paused, and he looked at the boy lying on the grass with a complicated expression. Was that why he didn't shout? Was he afraid of distracting her? For Luo Qingtong, saving the boy was just a matter of convenience. At that time, saving him from the pursuit of the group of pythons was the fastest. But she did not expect that the other party was so pure and kind that he would pay with his life just because she saved his life. Really silly to the point of being cute. Luo Qingtong muttered in her heart. How could anything happen to her? Those giant pythons changed their attacks again. As long as there was a glimmer of life, as long as they did not block all her escape routes like the man before, she would be able to escape in time. But he himself. The giant python's poison was extremely powerful. Coupled with the drug in his body that induced the giant pythons to go berserk, it instantly combined into another terrible poison. She was afraid that the person behind the scenes who had drugged him deliberately. Chapter 31. Luo Qingtong said, but her hands did not stop moving. She grabbed the young man's slender wrist and checked his pulse. She had to determine the composition of the poison in his body before she could prescribe the right medicine. Others checked the pulse by looking at the pulse. Only Luo Qingtong checked the pulse to see how many types of poison there were in a person's body. As long as there was a trace of life left in him, she would be able to pull him back even if he was sent to hell. Other than the evil eye, Luo Qingtong was also known as the evil Dr. Ghost Eye. However, when she finished checking the condition of the young man's body, her exquisite and beautiful face instantly turned cold. How unlucky was this young man? His body was as pitiful as a sieve. Other than the poison from the giant python and the medicine, there was also an old poison in his body. It was extremely insidious. The poison had blocked the young man's meridians and had almost melted them into a lump. It made his body look like a piece of trash. How could he be poisoned by such a poison? No wonder he looked like he came from an illustrious family and had so many spiritual weapons on him, but he did not have any strength. Logically speaking, a child from such a family should not be too weak. Yet, the young man was still being chased by a group of level 3 demonic pythons with all his spiritual weapons and had almost lost his life. Luo Qingtong frowned and looked at the young man for a long time. Then she sighed, "Forget it, you're lucky to have met me." She let go of the young man's wrist and raised her head to scan the surroundings. Instantly, she found a few herbs that could cure the python's poison. This was the advantage of being in the depths of the Nine Shamans Mountain. There were spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs everywhere. It was up to you to find them. Swoosh. Luo Qingtong plucked the herbs and wrapped them with her spiritual energy. Then she rubbed them. A ball of green medicinal liquid appeared in her hand. This was Luo Qingtong's unique refining technique. Because she had the eye technique, she could clearly see the medicinal properties of the spiritual herbs. She could easily keep the medicinal properties that she needed and remove the unwanted ones. For her, the formula for the medicinal liquid did not exist at all. Even if she was missing a few herbs, she could immediately find the corresponding herbs to replace them. In Luo Qingtong's hands, as long as the result was confirmed, as long as you could find the corresponding medicinal herbs, she could break through the limitations of the formula and refine the corresponding medicine for you. In the 24th century, countless people wanted to ask her to take action. After all, with the rapid development of technology, many precious medicinal herbs had become extinct. Many recipes already existed in name only. But in the hands of Luo Qingtong, none of this was a problem. The reason why the poison in her eyes could not be cured was because there was no substitute for the antidote in the Nine Shaman Mountain. He must have seen a ghost. Who was the one who gave Luo Xanning the poison? Antidotes were so rare and hard to find. Obviously, he was determined to destroy the original owner's eyes. Luo Qingtong frowned as she thought. She raised her hand and fed the liquid medicine into the young man's mouth. Very quickly, the latter's pale and slightly ashy complexion returned to normal. Streams of black blood flowed out of the wound, but in an instant, it returned to the bright red color of a normal wound. All right, the python poison is cured. However, the poison that had accumulated in his body for many years could not be cured immediately. After all, the young man's body was too weak. The poison had merged too tightly with his meridians. Curing the poison was not something that could be done in a short period of time. Luo Qingtong could use her eye technique to completely separate the poison from the young man's meridians. Chapter 32. Tisk Troublesome. Luo Qingtong raised her hand and wrote down a prescription for the youth's body. Then she stuffed it into the youth's arms. At the same time, she noted that if the poison was to be completely detoxified, the heretical physician ghostly eyes could be found. She injected her aura into the young man's body and used her inner sight to temporarily isolate the poison in his body from his meridians. This way, the youth would not be affected by the accumulated poison until the aura she injected into his body disappeared. His innate talent would be revealed. As long as the people around him injected their aura into his body and ensured that their aura did not disappear, the poison would have no effect on the youth. After doing all this, Luo Qingtong carried the youth in her arms again and prepared to leave. At this moment, Little Pig, who had been silently hiding in her sleeve with his butt sticking up, seemed to have thought of something and jumped up with a yelp. Oh no, oh no. Because of your messy words, I forgot about that matter. Quick, quick, quick. Let's go. It'll be too late if we don't leave now. Little Pig's 4 little trotters jumped up and down in Luo Qingtong's sleeve like an ant on a hot pan. What's the matter? Luo Qingtong had almost forgotten about Little Pig's silence. When she noticed that something was wrong with Little Pig's voice, she immediately freed one of her hands and pulled Little Pig out. What else are you hiding from me? What do you mean, what else am I hiding from you? Before Little Pig could finish his sentence, rumble, the entire 9 Shaman Mountain started to shake. Bam! Caught off guard, Luo Qingtong lost her balance and fell to the ground with the youth in her arms. The entire 9 Shaman Mountain range was shaking violently, as if something was about to emerge from the ground. Luo Qingtong lifted her eyes and scanned the area. She was instantly stunned. Not far away, on the highest peak of the 9 Shaman Mountain range, a strange scene suddenly appeared. Countless multicolored rays of light seemed to descend from the sky, completely enveloping the mountain peak. On top of the mountain peak, there seemed to be a huge shadow slowly rising. What is this? Luo Qingtong looked at this scene in surprise. The shadow was so large that it almost covered the entire area within a radius of several hundred miles. Rays of golden light were refracted from it. In the next second, a shocking spectacle of the immortal palace appeared in front of Luo Qingtong's eyes. Amidst the golden light, a magnificent mirage-like immortal palace suddenly appeared. Rumble. The gigantic immortal palace seemed to have been formed out of thin air. Its appearance in the midst of the golden light startled everyone in the Jianghu mountain range. Even the countless people who were tens of thousands of miles away saw this shocking scene. At the same time, in Wingay City, the capital of Eastern Fence Country, Yuan frowned as he looked at 7th Princess Xuanhuan, who was standing in front of him. His extraordinarily handsome face was filled with coldness. Why are you here? Yuanma's tone wasn't very good. He happened to pass by the eastern border country for some business and saw his sister here. He understood Xuanhuan's personality. She had always hated and disliked Luo Qingtong and didn't want her to be his wife. Why would she suddenly come here for no reason? When he thought about how he had just become a new student of the Holy Institute and how Xuanhuan had been nagging Luo Qingtong that he wasn't worthy of her, Yuanma's gaze suddenly turned sharp. Chapter 33. Who said I'm here for her? Being stared at by Yuanma like this, Xuanhuan was very nervous. She retorted with a guilty conscience. Then she saw her brother's face darken, which made her angry. She had always been spoiled and willful. She was the only daughter of the Empress of the Tianyu Empire. She was also the sister of Yuan, a proud son of the heavens. Her status was extremely noble. Even the Emperor of Tianyu treated her like the apple of his eye. Almost no one dared to give her any face. Seeing that Yuan actually scolded him for Luo Qingtong, he immediately felt wronged and angry. So what if I'm here for her? Imperial brother, why are you so protective of such a woman who doesn't have any self-awareness? Xuanhuan was angry. She wasn't afraid of her brother anymore. She raised her voice. She doesn't know if she's good enough for you. If I were her, I would have killed myself out of shame. The #1 genius of the Luo family in the easternly country, the #1 beauty. She's really amazing. Any young lady from a low-level family in the Tianyu Empire is better than her. She pouted and looked at Yuanma. Brother, you're already a heaven-grade freshman of the Saint Academy. You're going to the Saint capital soon. In the Empire of Qin, the Saint Dynasty, the 8 empires, 3,000 high-level countries, 8,000 middle-level countries, and tens of thousands of low-level countries, how many people can enter the Saint Academy? No more than 10,000 people. And there are only a few hundred heaven-grade freshmen. When you get to the Saint Academy, you can have any woman you want. Why do you have to choose this Luo Qingtong? I don't want such a sister-in-law. I heard from Empress Mother that you must marry her. She also said that when she turns 16, you'll come to pick her up. Brother, are you stupid? Xuanhuan was even angrier. You don't like her at all. It's just a marriage contract. Why don't you just break off the engagement? But you don't want to. What's so good about Luo Qingtong? In terms of talent, she's not as good as. When she said this, she seemed to feel that she had spilled the beans and quickly stopped talking. Anyway, brother, you're the clouds in the sky. Luo Qingtong is the mud on the ground. With her status and talent, she is not worthy of you at all. She might not even be able to get into the Holy Academy's branch in the imperial capital. How embarrassing it is for you to have such a princess. I'm doing this for your own good. You obviously have a better choice, imperial brother. Are you done? Yuanma looked at her coldly, then stood up abruptly. If you're done talking, then hurry up and go back. I have things to do, so I don't have time for you. Don't force me to send people to take you back. In addition, Luo Qingtong and I are engaged. I don't like her, but I must marry her. No one can change this. You can treat her as a decoration, a mass of air that doesn't exist. But she is destined to be my princess. Yuan Mo said as he strode out. Imperial brother. Seeing his departing figure, Yuan Shui stomped her feet in anger. Why must Imperial brother be so stubborn? Damn it. Fortunately, he had already made the first move. Luo Qingtong wants to be my royal sister-in-law? Maybe in her next life. Just as Yuan Shui was about to leave in a huff and reluctantly, there was a rumble. A deafening sound came from the horizon. Then, under the astonished gazes of countless people, a huge palace appeared on the highest peak of the Jianghu mountain range. Yuanma, who had already walked some distance away, looked up when he heard the commotion. His pupils shrank instantly. Chapter 34. What is that? Everyone looked at the changes at the peak of the Nine Shaman Mountain in shock. They didn't know how such a huge palace had appeared out of thin air. The vast, majestic, and endless aura suddenly poured out in all directions when the enormous palace appeared, causing countless people to boil with excitement. It's the immortal sex ruins. It must be the immortal sex ruins. Legend has it that the immortal sex ruins were buried before the Nine Shaman Mountain, but everyone thought it was just a rumor. I didn't expect it to be true. Countless voices sounded from all directions. Everyone looked at the huge immortal sex ruins with fiery eyes. Instantly they rushed towards the Nine Shaman Mountain range. The immortal sex ruins. This was the immortal sex ruins. The legendary inheritance left behind by the immortal sect. Even if there was no inheritance, the treasures within were enough to make countless people go crazy. Shwa shwa shwa. Numerous figures rushed towards the Nine Shaman Mountain range from all directions. Among them there was the aura of martial emperors who could stand in the air, as well as soul masters who could use soul techniques. The cultivators of the True Spill continent were divided into two types: martial cultivators and soul cultivators. Martial cultivation was the cultivation of martial skills and the strengthening of one's body. Soul cultivators cultivated spiritual power and soul power. Legend has it that every human soul had its own spirituality. As long as one could awaken this spirituality, they would be able to wield incredible power. In the True Spill continent, this spirituality was called the Soul Seal. Only those with the Soul Seal could cultivate their souls and become a soul master. In the True Spill continent, there were very few people who could awaken the Soul Seal and become a soul master. Most people could only cultivate martial arts and continuously surpass their limits by refining their bodies. This kind of cultivation was much more difficult than becoming a soul master, and it was very difficult to advance. In comparison, soul masters who had the Soul Seal could sense the power of the laws of heaven and earth and were much more blessed than martial cultivators. Rumble. As everyone rushed towards the immortal sex ruins, Luo Qingtong also looked at the huge palace on the peak of the mountain with shock in her eyes. Little Pig, who was being strangled in her hands, also stared blankly. It's over, it's over. The seal has been broken. I told you to run. You stupid woman. Why aren't you running now? When that guy comes out. Before it could finish its words, there was a roar. An incomparably loud roar suddenly resounded like a clap of thunder, spreading in all directions. The shadow of an enormous beast suddenly appeared behind the pavilion. A pair of large lantern-like eyes slowly opened in the darkness. Holy shit, that guy really ran out. Before Little Pig could finish his sentence, Luo Qingtong grabbed him by the neck and pulled him out. What the hell is going on? You better tell me honestly. The girl narrowed her eyes dangerously. She knew there was something wrong with this pig. It called itself the ancient divine pig, and it had somehow signed some kind of contract with her. Now, it seemed to have something to do with this immortal palace that had suddenly appeared. What was it trying to do? Now is not the time to talk about this. Little Pig was about to go crazy. I've already signed a contract with you. What are you afraid of? Do you know that this kind of contract is the worst for me? He looked behind Luo Qingtong. The latter's back was facing the peak of the mountain, so she naturally didn't know that the giant beast that had appeared behind the immortal palace had already turned its head to look at her. You stupid woman, run. Little Pig stomped his hooves with a mission. Then he suddenly opened his beady eyes wide. Dodge. Boom. Before he could finish his words, Luo Qingtong felt an extremely dangerous aura coming from behind her. Chapter 35. Bam. She threw herself to the side and fell to the ground with the young man in her arms. Then she was sent flying by the huge shockwave. Fortunately, she calculated her eye technique well and landed at the weakest part of the attack. She didn't suffer any serious injuries even though she was sent flying. "You stupid pig, what did you do?" Luo Qingtong gritted her teeth as she looked at the huge crater that was almost 100 meters wide where she was standing before. Just a little bit more and she would have been blasted into minced meat. Luo Qingtong looked behind her. A pair of incomparably large golden eyes met her gaze in midair. The light in the eyes was like the radiance of stars and fire. It was extremely brilliant and terrifying. Luo Qingtong looked at the huge tail that was waving from the shadows. She wished she could strangle the pig in her arms. "What the hell did you provoke?" She gnashed her teeth and said. "It's the divine connecting beast." Little Pig was kicking the ground with its 4 hooves in her hand while squeaking like a little pig waiting to be slaughtered. "Its strength is only second to the ancient divine beasts. Why aren't you running? You'll be dead if you don't run. It's coming for us." "Get lost. It's obviously coming for you." This stupid pig signed a contract with her and caused her to be implicated. "Just wait until I get out of here safely and see how I'll deal with it." Luo Qingtong gnashed her teeth in hatred. Seeing that the huge beast was about to make a move again, she suddenly dashed forward and began to escape. A martial master connecting with a divine connecting beast. Heavens, you really think highly of me. I'm really going to be played to death. Before Luo Qingtong left, she couldn't care less about the young man in her arms. She wasn't sure what would happen to her in the end. Before she left, she used her eye technique to search for a safe corner and pushed the young man in her arms out. Then, she waved her hand and covered the unconscious young man with countless leaves and branches. Swoosh, swoosh. After doing all this, Luo Qingtong ran out with all her strength. Behind her, the huge beast finally appeared from the shadows. Luo Qingtong turned around and took a look. The appearance of the divine sky-connecting beast was extraordinarily beautiful. Its snow-white fur covered its entire body from head to tail, and it was as elegant and flamboyant as silk. 9 long snow-white tails floated in the air, almost covering the entire 9 Shaman mountain range within them. This divine sky-connecting beast looked like a tiger, a leopard, and a cat. It even looked a little like a fox. Luo Qingtong couldn't tell what the other party was. Its pair of dazzling golden eyes revealed the majesty of a divine beast. Rumble. Every time its feet stomped on the ground, abyss-like cracks would appear on the ground. The crack continued to extend forward. If Luo Qingtong did not have the assistance of her eye technique, she would have fallen into the abyss when the giant beast jumped off the mountain for the first time. Rumble. 1 human and 1 beast chased after each other. And in the distance, the crowd that was rushing over here crazily saw this heaven-connecting divine beast, and their expressions suddenly changed. A divine beast. It's actually a divine beast. And it was extremely powerful. Seeing the might of the divine sky-connecting beast, the people's faces twitched violently and they instinctively ran back. A divine beast. They would be courting death if they charged up. The faces of the soul masters and martial emperors who were charging at the front turned green. They saw the divine sky-connecting beast charging towards them. There was no other way. It was their fault for flying so high. Wasn't this a ready-made target? Chapter 36. Jianghu Emergency. Get rid of evil for the people. Dear heroes. It's up to you now. Luo Qingtong dashed past the soul masters and martial emperors at lightning speed. Before she could catch her breath, she heard a few screams coming from behind her. Then waves after waves of violent attacks came from behind her. When she turned around to look, she instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. Oh my God! In her eyes, the spirit masters and the martial emperors were swept away like flies by the heaven-connecting divine beast's tail. They instantly became the brightest stars in the distance. She didn't know if their corpses were intact. Isn't this divine connecting beast too strong? Luo Qingtong felt a toothache. When she saw the pair of golden eyes looking at her again, her lips twitched and she hurriedly ran for her life. But running away like this was not a solution. This heaven-connecting divine beast was too powerful. A divine beast. And it was an adult. If Luo Qingtong didn't have her eye technique, she would have died a long time ago. But even if she had her eye technique, she couldn't use it indefinitely. Her spiritual power was limited. Moreover, this divine connecting beast was getting closer and closer. Luo Qingtong looked at the approaching black shadow and clenched the little fat pig in her hand tightly. I'll give you 3 breaths of time to think of a way to deal with this divine connecting beast. Aren't you some ancient divine pig? Why don't you show me your power? I can't do it. Little Pig's pig face clearly conveyed this message. It said with grief and indignation, I already said my strength is sealed. If I could do it, why would I need to sign a contract with you? It could still use some of its strength, but it couldn't defeat the other party. Otherwise, why would it ask her to run? Then you can wait for your death. I'll throw you out now. Maybe it won't chase after me after it catches you. Luo Qingtong gnashed her teeth. However, she knew that the possibility of this happening was very small. After all, she had already made a contract with this pig. That heaven-connecting divine beast might not let her go. But how would he know if he didn't try? Don't. Seeing Luo Qingtong's expression turn cold, Little Pig shouted at the top of his lungs. All right. At a time like this, I can only sacrifice myself to save the greater good. It said with a heroic look. Luo Qingtong looked at it suspiciously. No matter how he looked at it, this pig did not look like a person who would do such a thing. No, a pig. This way. Little Pig raised his hoof to the right. I'll believe you this time. The lives of a human and a pig were tied together. Luo Qingtong could only believe it. If it dared to lie to her, she would tear it apart and throw it to the heaven-connecting divine beast. Shwa. Under Little Pig's guidance, Luo Qingtong's figure moved forward quickly and then made a sharp turn. Turn left, turn right, turn left again. Luo Qingtong listened to Little Pig's instructions and ran forward with all her might. She could feel that the energy in her body was circulating slower and slower, and was about to be exhausted. Damn it. I forgot to take into account the strength of this body. Her pupil technique could still hold on, but the energy in this body couldn't. Fortunately, Luo Qingtong was an alchemist. She held her breath and ran as she picked up a few herbs that could replenish her energy. She crushed them and mixed them into a medicinal liquid, then swallowed it and recovered a bit of her strength. How much longer? She gritted her teeth and asked. If this continued, she wouldn't be able to hold on. We're here. It's right in front. The savior is right in front. Little Pig pointed forward with his hoof. Chapter 37. In front of them stood Yi Qianxian in his silver robe and black hair. In this earth-shattering scene he looked like a god descending from the heavens. Even though his face was faintly outstanding, it couldn't hide the handsomeness of his face, which was shrouded in layers of mist. The man's body was surrounded by a powerful aura. In this scene of the sky collapsing and earth collapsing caused by the divine sky-connecting beast, he stood alone without any ripples. However, no matter how strong he was, Luo Qingtong still had a grudge against him. If he ran over like this, he wouldn't be able to save her life. It would be good enough if he didn't get slapped to death. This stupid pig, did it summon a savior or a killer? Luo Qingtong gritted her teeth and glared at the little pig in her hand. Feeling her anger, the little pig tried its best to shrink its neck, which was so short that it almost didn't exist. It said weakly, he's the only one who can save us now. Believe me, other than him, no one else here can withstand a single attack from the divine connecting beast. Let alone save them. Therefore, no matter how dangerous it was, it had to go. Young girl. In fact, the little pig was also very helpless. If it wasn't forced by the situation, it wouldn't have taken the initiative to approach this man. Only the heavens knew that it contracted with Luo Qingtong to avoid him. However, it didn't expect that in the end, it still delivered itself to its doorstep. It sacrificed so much, but this woman didn't appreciate it. He's that strong? Luo Qingtong was astonished. Soon after, she thought of another matter. You know so much about him. Was it also because of you that he chased after me? She knew that man didn't seem to be so relentless. Why would he chase after her for thousands of miles? It turned out that it was this pig's doing again. The little pig didn't dare to admit it. It was afraid that Luo Qingtong would get angry and accidentally choke it to death. Who would it cry to at that time? No, absolutely not. I say, can you think of a way to escape first? He's looking over here. Quickly think of a way to deal with him. Deal with your ass. Luo Qingtong wanted nothing more than to slap it to death. This man is so strong, why don't you try to deal with him? It sounded so simple. Didn't you succeed last time? Use that move. Luo Qingtong was infuriated. So you lured me here? Do you think he's as stupid as you? Who would fall for the same trick twice in a row? This stupid pig. What should I do? The pig was dumbfounded. If that man didn't help them, they would die. Why don't you try seducing him? Try your head. Luo Qingtong could not be bothered with it. Of her was the divine connecting beast. That enormous shadow had completely enveloped an area of 100 miles around her. On the other side, Yi Qianren also looked over. There were wolves in front and tigers behind. God, what kind of enmity do I have with you that you have to torment me like this? Luo Qingtong wanted to curse. At this moment, a blood-red light flashed in her eyes. She suddenly had an idea. I'm sorry, handsome. Since I've tricked you twice, I don't mind tricking you again, right? Saving a life is better than building a 7-floor pagoda. I'm helping you accumulate good karma. Luo Qingtong muttered. Then she made up her mind and gritted her teeth. She charged towards Yi Qianren. Handsome, save me. Chapter 38. Yi Qianxian stared at the young girl who was hurrying towards him. She cut a sorry figure and the bloodstains on her face had been washed clean. However, because she had been on the run for this period of time, her face was covered in dust and sweat. She looked no better than before. Her clothes were torn in many places and when she moved, one could vaguely see the lustrous light that flashed across her clothes. However, even though she was in such a sorry state and had still raised her hand to ask for help, he could not sense any sign of weakness from her. Even her cry for help was full of energy and self-righteousness. Yi Qianxian narrowed his eyes and sized up Luo Qingtong. At the same time, Luo Qingtong was also sizing up the man opposite her. She had to admit that even though the man's face was covered, it could not hide his aura and elegance. The way he lowered his head and looked at her was like a divine king from the 9 heavens, surveying his subjects. Indifferent, dignified, arrogant, sharp, unapproachable. However, Luo Qingtong quickly erased this feeling from her mind. What a joke. For the sake of survival, even if he really was a peerless divine king from the 9 heavens, she would drag him down from his high and mighty throne. Handsome, save me. Luo Qingtong took a deep breath and shouted, if you don't save me, I'll tell everyone in the 9 Magi mountain range that the inner part of your thigh, near my little brother, has... Boom! Yi Qianren's figure instantly moved. He appeared next to Luo Qingtong and the divine sky-connecting beast roared when it sensed the threat from his aura. In an instant, an earth-shattering attack was launched towards him. Bam! Yi Qianxian's aura clashed fiercely with the divine sky-connecting beast's aura. The two strong forces collided, and the sound of explosions in the air rang out one after another, continuously rising and falling without end. Boom! As the divine connecting beast hissed in pain, Yi Qianxian chopped off one of the other party's long tails. His sharp gaze turned towards Luo Qingtong, who had already left the battlefield and was rushing into the distance. This woman had tricked him again. Yi Qianxian's expression darkened. His actions just now were completely unintentional. Luo Qingtong's voice was very loud, and what she said was very private. Before he could react, his body had already rushed out instinctively. In fact, that woman didn't even know who he was, nor did she know him. What could she proclaim? Moreover, there was no birthmark on his inner thigh. This woman really dared to say anything. While Yi Qianxian was gritting his teeth, Luo Qingtong had already run far away. Oh my god. That man's eyes were so scary. Luo Qingtong thought that if she was tricked by the same person 3 times in a row, her eyes would probably be scarier than the other person's. As he thought of this, his figure moved even faster. That man was so strong that he wasn't human. Such a strong divine connecting beast, he had chopped off one of its long tails with just a lift of his hand. Oh my god. Luo Qingtong didn't know whether it was right or wrong for her to provoke such a man again and again. Roar. Behind her, the divine connecting beast's miserable roars could be heard. She didn't know how it was being ravaged by that man. After being tricked by her for no reason, the other party's anger was probably going to be vented on the divine connecting beast. Luo Qingtong said a few words of Amitabha for the divine connecting beast without any sincerity and prepared to take a detour and sneak down the mountain. At this moment, a crack suddenly appeared under her feet. Chapter 39. This life and death dual polarity sword is the result of countless efforts of my sect. Unfortunately, it was not fully perfected. Otherwise, it could definitely kill a god. That's because we comprehended the inscription of life and death from the inscriptions on the divine tablet back then. Unfortunately, we had too little time and the news leaked out too quickly. As a result, all our efforts were in vain. Good disciple. You are a genius with a monstrous aptitude. Your cultivation is low, but you can see through the antidote of the most powerful medicine and poison. In the future, you will definitely be able to unravel all the secrets of the inscriptions on the divine tablet. At that time, you will be able to complete the inscriptions engraved in the life and death sword and push this sword to the level of a divine weapon. Luo Qingtong was pinned down by his hand and could not move at all. She could only accept his inheritance passively. She was really speechless. I didn't agree to accept your inheritance. What kind of good disciple are you calling me? Can you stop talking to yourself? However, she could not open her mouth at all. She could only stare at this unreasonable old man in front of her. Tian Mingzi had already made up his mind to force a deal. Even if Luo Qingtong stared at him, he would not let go. It didn't matter if Luo Qingtong did not want to accept it. He believed that Luo Qingtong was enough. Good disciple, you must be very careful when you use this life and death sword. It's best if you use your own inscription technique to coat it with another layer of inscriptions to cover up the inscription brand that I refined on it. In this way, the sect's enemies will not discover your existence. I know you are not willing to accept this inheritance, but until now, I have no other reliable person to entrust it to. He did not know whether the other people who rushed to inherit the inheritance were sincere or not. What if they entrusted it to the wrong person? Even if his soul was destroyed, he would not be able to atone for his sins. Thinking of this, Tian Mingzi sighed heavily. Little girl, just take it that I have wronged you. There will be no enemies in this world. You don't have to be so careful for the time being. However, the life and death sword is very powerful. In order to prevent others from harboring evil intentions, you still have to be a little more careful. I have too much to say to you. It is extremely difficult to get started with inscriptions. If I could, I would like to bring you along and lay a solid foundation for you. Unfortunately, I don't have much time left. Now, I will guide you to refine the 9 exquisite pagoda and the life and death sword. From now on, they will treat you as their master. As Tian Mingzi spoke Luo Qingtong's qi. Suddenly, Tian Mingzi's body, Luo Qingtong Luo Qingtong Luo Qingtong Luo Qingtong Luo Luo, Qingtong Luo Luo's Luo. Rumble. Luo. Those who had rushed to the mountain peak or to where the divine sky-connecting beast and Yi Qianren were fighting saw the immortal sect ruins on the mountain quickly collapse. Their eyes widened and their hearts were filled with disbelief. Once. Luan Lulua Luan to Luo Luo to Luo. Someone has obtained the inheritance of the Luo Luo Luo. Someone must have obtained the inheritance of the Luo Luo Luo. Voices came from the crowd one after another. Everyone's heart was filled with jealousy. Who is it? Who has obtained the inheritance of the Luo 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 Luo? Find the person. Kill him. Snatch the inheritance of the Luo 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 Luo. Luo Luo Luo's people rushed toward the collapsed mountain peak with bloodshot eyes. Most of them had lost their minds. Yuan Mo Luo Xining, and the others had just arrived at the foot of the mountain peak. In order to be the first to enter the Luo 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 Luo, Yuan Mo had even used the special reward he had received from the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin. Chapter 40. *Ck. Luo Qingtong cursed in her heart. Before she could react, she was sucked into a ball of darkness. Bam! She fell heavily to the ground. Before she could get up, she heard a squeak that sounded like a pig being slaughtered. Ah! Master, save me! Luo Qingtong felt a headache coming on when she heard the squeak. That stupid pig would only call her master when it had something to do with her. She raised her head and saw that it was tied to a platform in front of her. There was a formation on the platform, and the totem of the divine connecting beast was engraved on it. It was obvious that this formation was related to the divine connecting beast outside. Luo Qingtong recalled what Little Pig said, that guy really came out. She really wanted to slap this stupid pig to death. Sure enough, everything was caused by you. She gnashed her teeth and said, I didn't have a choice. I was originally sealed here. Didn't I just tell you to run away? Now is not the time to talk about this. Quickly come and save me. If that heaven-connecting divine beast comes back, neither of us will have a good ending. Don't forget that we have a contract. Are you going to abandon me like this? Master, you are so cruel. Little Pig looked at her with teary eyes. His appearance was indescribably pitiful and cute. However, Luo Qingtong, who had already seen through him, didn't even spare him a glance. She knitted her brows and looked at the formation in front of her. This formation was countless times more complicated than the one she saw at the place where the man was recuperating. Luo Qingtong had seen all kinds of ancient formations in the 24th century. However, the one in front of her was even more complicated than the most ancient formations that were left behind by immortals. What kind of existence was Little Pig? How could he be sealed by such a formation? Furthermore, a divine connecting beast was left behind to guard him? Luo Qingtong thought to herself. With a cold face, she started to analyze the structure of this formation and the method to break it. Time slowly ticked by. Just as the divine connecting beast totem was about to fill up, a bloody light flashed in Luo Qingtong's eyes. Bang! The formation that bound little pig suddenly exploded. Ah! I'm free. True freedom. At the center of the formation, little pig jumped up in joy. At this moment, a gloomy and aged voice suddenly appeared. Who broke into the forbidden area of my immortal slayer palace and broke my formation? Bang! 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 Lights suddenly lit up all around, illuminating the entire place in an instant. Immortal Slayer Palace? Luo Qingtong stepped forward and grabbed Little Pig in her hand to prevent it from being used to threaten her. She scanned her surroundings and realized that she had been too busy breaking the formation to notice that she was in a huge palace. Immortal Slayer Palace. Could it be the beautiful palace on the mountain peak? Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows and thought to herself. Bah! Just as she was thinking, her vision suddenly turned black. She had used up all the spiritual energy in her mind, and now she was completely blind. However, she was determined and didn't show it on her face. Instead, she secretly recovered her mental strength. You're actually blind? A blind person can break my formation. Interesting. That voice seemed to be very interested in her. Luo Qingtong felt a chill in front of her as if something had swept in front of her. That gust of wind was cold and gloomy. Luo Qingtong had encountered this kind of aura before. She immediately squinted her eyes. Chapter 41. My eyes are blind but my heart is not. What's the big deal about breaking the array? She said lightly. Ah, good. Interesting. My eyes are blind but my heart is not. I like such a straightforward girl like you. Compared to those people who would call me a senior expert, they were much better. On the surface they were respectful, but in reality they couldn't wait to kill me. Ah. That person's voice was very sinister and had a hint of madness. Luo Qingtong listened but did not say anything. It did not matter if the other party was a lunatic or not. It had nothing to do with her. Little girl, look at you. You must have been harmed by someone, right? That person laughed a few times. Then, he restrained his tone and looked at her sinisterly. The poison in your eyes did not last more than 24 hours. Although your clothes are exquisite and beautiful, they are torn and tattered. It seems that you have been harmed by someone, and it is someone close to you. That voice sneered. So what? I will return all of them sooner or later. Luo Qingtong said coldly. Her sorry state was not something that anyone could see. Ah, good. What a good return. I like arrogant little girls like you. That voice became crazy again. In the next second his tone suddenly changed. Little girl, you and I are fated. Are you willing to inherit my sect's inheritance? I will not ask you to do anything. I just want you to clear the name of our immortal Slayer Palace. Not interested. Luo Qingtong's voice was light. This old man was digging a hole for her to jump into? The name of the immortal Slayer Palace was so evil. It was either a heretical sect or it was harmed by someone. Since he wanted her to clear the name of the other party, it meant that it was the second case. Looking at the power of the beautiful palace and the strength of the divine sky-connecting beast, the other party's enemy was not an ordinary person. She must be crazy to accept such a big trouble. Ah. Once she said that, that voice seemed to be even happier. Good, good, good. I didn't misjudge you. If you had said that you wanted it, you would be a corpse now. Ah. That voice seemed to have gone mad, seemed to be crying and seemed to be laughing at the same time. It was gloomy and sharp, and it caused one's hair to stand on end upon hearing it. Luo Qingtong didn't care at all. She had heard sounds that were hundreds of times more terrifying than this. What was this? Little girl, you're very good. I like you very much. Don't be in such a hurry to refuse. Do you know what kind of existence our immortal Slayer Palace is? That is the holy land of the immortal sects. As long as you obtain the inheritance of my immortal Slayer Palace, no one here can stop you. The 7 desolates of the northern lands and the 3 islands of Penglai. These are the existences that you worship as gods. You are nothing in front of the immortal Slayer Palace. The voice grew wilder and wilder. Luo Qingtong didn't have the heart to tell him that she didn't understand what he was saying at all. There was no such thing in the original owner's memory. However, the immortal sect Holy Land sounded quite amazing. Unfortunately, my fate is in my own hands, not in the hands of the heavens. She would get what she wanted. If she didn't want to, no one could force her. Old man, save your saliva. I'm really not interested in the inheritance of your immortal slayer palace. Please open the door and let me out. There should be a lot of people running over here right now. There's bound to be someone who fits your requirements. She would politely decline this big trouble. No, I've taken a fancy to you. When that voice heard her words, he was almost angered half to death. The stinky girl. He had said so much just now, but it was all for naught, wasn't it? Do you know the benefits of inheriting our immortal slayer palace's inheritance? It can allow you to look down on this world, and then be hunted down by the enemies of a stronger realm, right? Thank you. She didn't need it. She really didn't need it. Chapter 42. Also, don't you want to cure your eyes? Do you know that the poison in your body is not any ordinary poison? The alchemist here will not be able to cure you. Do you want to be blind for the rest of your life? Don't you want to regain your eyesight? I can help you. As long as you agree to accept the inheritance of the immortal slayer palace, I will tell you how to cure your eyes. Luo Qingtong sighed when she heard this. I really don't need it. I know what kind of poison is in my body and I know how to cure it. I don't need your help. Hubby, you have so much time. You can open the door and choose a new successor. Now that the ruins of the immortal slayer sect had appeared in the Nine Magi Mountain, the people outside would be running for their lives. Why was this old man so sure about her? It's worthless if you give it to me. I don't want it. Okay. This was a good and powerful reason. Luo Qingtong was speechless. Then she heard the voice say angrily, "You are poisoned by the most powerful medicine. How do you know how to cure it? That's impossible." I really know. Luo Qingtong did not want to waste any more time with him. She told him all the herbs that could cure the poison. Am I right? Can you let me go now? After Luo Qingtong finished speaking, she realized that the entire hall was silent. After an unknown amount of time, a low voice that sounded like crying and laughing suddenly came from the direction of that person. Ah, good. The voice sounded like crying and laughing at the same time. In the next second, before Luo Qingtong could react, a cold finger was placed between her eyebrows. In an instant, an extremely huge and oppressive force rushed into her body. Little girl. It's you? I have waited for so many years. Finally, a prodigy like you has appeared. There is hope for the inheritance of the immortal slayer palace. The legacy of the immortal slayer sect will not be lost. The voice was choking and trembling. Inexplicably, the image of a tearful old man suddenly appeared in Luo Qingtong's mind. He cried and laughed as he looked at Luo Qingtong. Then he turned into a ray of light and wrapped Luo Qingtong up. Little girl, I won't let you do anything. You only need to inherit my sect's legacy. I Tian Mingzi roamed unhindered my entire life and ascended to the peak of the great Tao of inscription. But in the end, because of a moment of benevolence, I let a wolf into the house and ended up dying without a complete corpse, and my sect was destroyed. Now that my soul is about to disperse, I shall pass on my last legacy to you. I only hope that you can pass down my sect's inscription technique. Don't let it die out. There are two supreme treasures here. I risked my life to bring them out of the sect when it was destroyed. Those people destroyed my sect because of greed. Even if I don't have a corpse left, I won't leave a fart for them. At this point, the old man spat fiercely before continuing. This is the 9-layered exquisite pagoda. It has endless magical uses. My sect's legacy is inside. You can take a look at it. This life and death sword is the root of my sect's destruction. The sword has two blades, one is life and the other is death. The life blade can absorb life and soul to replenish your strength. The death blade can kill people. The cut is extremely difficult to heal and save. The stronger you are, the harder it is to heal the cut. Only the life blade can dispel the power of the death blade. Chapter 43. This life and death dual polarity sword is the result of countless efforts of my sect. Unfortunately, it was not fully perfected. Otherwise, it could definitely kill a god. That's because we comprehended the inscription of life and death from the inscriptions on the divine tablet back then. Unfortunately, we had too little time and the news leaked out too quickly. As a result, all our efforts were in vain. Good disciple. You are a genius with a monstrous aptitude. Your cultivation is low, but you can see through the antidote of the most powerful medicine and poison. In the future, you will definitely be able to unravel all the secrets of the inscriptions on the divine tablet. At that time, you will be able to complete the inscriptions engraved in the life and death sword and push this sword to the level of a divine weapon. Luo Qingtong was pinned down by his hand and could not move at all. She could only accept his inheritance passively. She was really speechless. I didn't agree to accept your inheritance. What kind of good disciple are you calling me? Can you stop talking to yourself? However, she could not open her mouth at all. She could only stare at this unreasonable old man in front of her. Tian Mingzi had already made up his mind to force a deal. Even if Luo Qingtong stared at him, he would not let go. It didn't matter if Luo Qingtong did not want to accept it. He believed that Luo Qingtong was enough. My good disciple, you have to be very careful when you use this life and death sword. It's best if you use your own inscription technique to coat it with another layer of inscriptions to cover up the inscription mark I've made on it. In this way, the sect's enemies will not discover your existence. I know you are not willing to accept this inheritance, but until now, I have no other reliable person to entrust it to. He did not know whether the other people who rushed to inherit the inheritance were sincere or not. What if they entrusted it to the wrong person? Even if his soul was destroyed, he would not be able to atone for his sins. Thinking of this, Tian Mingzi sighed heavily. Little girl, just take it that I have wronged you. There will be no enemies in this world. You don't have to be so careful for the time being. However, the power of the life and death yin-yang sword is enormous. In order to prevent others from harboring evil intentions, you'd better be careful. Master has too many things to say to you. It is extremely difficult to enter the path of inscription. If possible, Master would like to bring you into the path of inscription and lay a solid foundation for you. Unfortunately, I don't have much time left. Now conceal your spirit and chi. I will guide you to refine the 9-story exquisite pagoda and the life and death sword. From now on, they will regard you as their master and will not abandon you no matter what. As Tian Mingzi spoke, Luo Qingtong felt a burst of energy suddenly rushing towards the center of her eyebrows. After that, it rushed towards the depths of her mind. Rumble. Following Tian Mingzi's actions, the entire 9-shaman mountain range began to shake violently. What happened? Those who had rushed to the mountain peak or to where the divine sky-connecting beast and Yi Qianxian were fighting saw the celestial sect ruins on the mountain quickly collapse. Their eyes widened in disbelief. How was this possible? The immortal sect ruins had collapsed. Someone has obtained the inheritance of the celestial sect. Someone must have obtained the inheritance of the celestial sect. Voices rang out from the crowd one after another. Everyone's heart was filled with jealousy. Who is it? Who has obtained the inheritance of the celestial sect? Find the person. Kill him. Snatch the inheritance of the celestial sect. Everyone's eyes were bloodshot as they rushed towards the collapsed mountain peak. Most of them had lost their minds. As for Xuanhuan, Luo Xining and the rest, they had just arrived at the foot of the mountain peak. In order to be the first to enter the celestial sect ruins, Xuanhuan had even used the special reward he had received from the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin. Chapter 44. Rumble. The veins on Xuanhuan's forehead almost popped out when he saw the celestial sect relic collapsing in front of him. He looked at the peak of the mountain gloomily and then turned to look at Luo Xining and the rest coldly. If he hadn't met them halfway and Luo Xining had begged him to bring them along to find Luo Qingtong, who had broken through in the Jianghu mountain range, he might not have missed the celestial sect relic. What a bunch of trash. And Luo Qingtong too. Of all times she had to break through in the Jianghu mountain. What's the use of breaking through with such poor talent? A martial master couldn't even compare to his guards. She could just be a wallflower and wait for him to marry her. What's the point of showing off? Xuanhuan's eyes were cold. Luo Xenning's heart skipped a beat when he looked at her. She took a step back. Your Highness, she called out softly and glanced at the new students of the Saint Academy beside Xuanhuan. These people had all come out with Xuanhuan on this mission. Sensing her gaze, Xuanhuan forcibly suppressed the anger in his heart. Let's go. He didn't want to lose his dignity as a senior in front of these new students. These people would most likely be his followers after he entered the Saint Academy. Luo Xining was unwilling to see him leave. She had followed Xuanhuan all the way here. Of course she wanted to go further. Even if she couldn't get the celestial sect's inheritance, it would be good to get something else. She couldn't help but ask, Your Highness, aren't we going up? So many people have gone up. It's a pity to give up. She looked at the new students of the Saint Academy. These people didn't want to leave at first. But when they came out, the teachers told them to listen to Xuanhuan's orders. Hearing Luo Xining's words, someone couldn't help but say, Yes, senior, aren't we going up? What if there's still a chance? This was the celestial sect relic. They didn't want to give up so easily. Stupid. Xuanhuan was unhappy, but he didn't show it. It's too late. The celestial sect relic has collapsed. It means that everything inside is gone. Not only that, the person who obtained the inheritance is definitely not among them. If these people rush up, they won't get anything. They will only kill each other. If we follow them, we'll only get sucked into it. Fellow junior brothers, we still have matters to attend to by teacher, so it's not appropriate for us to stay here. As soon as his words came out, those freshmen of the Sacred Academy who had been carried away by the battle instantly sobered up. That was right. The collapse of the immortal sect ruins meant that the person who obtained the inheritance was no longer there. Those who were unwilling to give up would not be able to get it even if they rushed up. Under extreme unwillingness, these people were so anxious that their eyes turned red. They only knew how to kill and steal. At that time it would be a chaotic battle. Thinking of such a scene, everyone's face paled. Fortunately, Xuanhuan had seen through all of this. Otherwise, they would have all been dragged into it. Who knew how many people would have died? The main thing was that those casualties were completely worthless. What treasures did these people have that they would covet? With that thought in mind, everyone decisively said, "Senior brother, let's go." Xuanhuan nodded. He took one last look at the collapsing palace on the mountain peak. He felt an indescribable sense of regret. The ruins of an immortal sect. It was a pity that he had no fate with it. Just as Xuanhuan and the others were about to leave, an extremely tragic roar of a beast resounded in the sky. Everyone raised their heads and looked in the direction of the sound. Then they took a deep breath. Chapter 45. Rumble at the edge of the sky, where the huge beasts were entangled in battle, a shattered scene suddenly appeared. Large chunks of the mountain range collapsed. Mountains collapsed one after another. Up in the sky, a human figure was intertwined with the gigantic beast. Every collision of their attacks was enough to shatter mountains, collapse rocks, and tear space apart. Looking at it, one could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. Tremble. So strong. Everyone stared blankly at the battle in the sky. How could a person fight a divine beast like this? This was simply terrifying. Bang. Seeing the heaven-connecting divine beast being heavily blasted away, the surrounding crowd let out a series of gasps. Their attention had been focused on the immortal sect ruins and they had forgotten about the situation with the divine beasts. Only at this moment did he realize that the divine beast was actually being beaten back by a single person. Furthermore, he was covered in injuries. They gasped as they watched the sky-connecting divine beast wailing as it was blasted into the dense forest deep in the mountain range. Their eyes were filled with uncontrollable shock. How terrifying. So powerful. To actually be able to beat the heaven-connecting divine beast to such a state. Oh my God. Everyone was shocked. There were even more people who saw what happened to the martial kings and soul masters. They were even more reverent towards Yi Qianren, who was able to beat the heaven-connecting divine beast until it cried out in pain and fled. Senior brother. Did you see that? This person is so strong. I'm afraid he's even stronger than the principal. Seeing the man and beast disappear from their sight, the people behind Xuanhuan all swallowed their saliva with all their might. They were all people who had participated in the entrance examination of the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin. However, even the most powerful cultivator of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin, the Dean of the Sacred Academy, didn't give them such an oppressive aura as this man did. It was too terrifying. What level was the other party at? They had clearly seen that after the man had repelled the divine sky-connecting beast, he had glanced over. It was just a faint glance and it wasn't even directed at them, but it made them feel as if a sharp sword had pierced through their hearts. If the other party really made a move, even if they were thousands of meters apart, they would still be killed in an instant. As these people thought about it, they swallowed even more saliva. All of them felt their hearts palpitate. The other party clearly did not do anything, but they felt as if they had just taken a trip around the gates of hell. Xuanmo's forehead was also covered in sweat. The other party's aura was too strong. He couldn't resist at all. Go! He roared in a low voice and led everyone down the mountain. The group of people did not dare to stay any longer and left directly. Luo Xining was also dragged down the mountain by the Luo family. After this incident, no one dared to stay in the Nine Shamans mountain. No one knew if that expert would start a massacre in this mountain range. Even a divine beast could not defeat him. Even if there were a whole mountain full of people, it would not be enough for him to kill. Thinking of this, Everyone's hearts were beating like drums as they ran at lightning speed. As Luo Xingning was dragged away by the Luo family, she kept looking back in the direction where Yi Qianxian had disappeared. This was the first time she had seen such a strong person. In the past, she had thought that a man like Yuan Mo was strong enough. Now, it seemed that Yuan Mo, who was known as the #1 genius of the Empire of Tianyu, could not be compared to that man at all. Most importantly, although Luo Xingning did not see the man's face clearly, she could vaguely tell that the man was not old from the slight outline of his face. Was there really such a talented man in this world? Luo Xingning stared at the man's silhouette as he disappeared into the forest. Her heart itched as if it was being scratched by a cat. Chapter 46. Rumble. Luo Qingtong did not know what was happening outside. At this moment, she was wholeheartedly refining the 9-story exquisite pagoda and the life and death sword under Tianmingzi's guidance. These two items were the most precious treasures of the celestial sects. To successfully refine them for one's own use, it was naturally not something that could be compared to ordinary circumstances. Luo Qingtong gritted her teeth and endured wave after wave of attacks from their auras. If not for the fact that she had lived 2 lives and had a strong mental strength, she would have been rolling on the ground in pain by now. As the pain escalated, great changes began to take place in her body. Her meridians were completely opened and widened. Luo Qingtong could feel that her body was transforming at every moment. According to Tianmingzi, this was because the 9-story exquisite pagoda and the life and death sword were changing her physique so that she could accommodate and use them. This process was a kind of cleansing of Luo Qingtong's body. Once she got through it, Luo Qingtong's physique and talent would be promoted to a terrifying level. After all, in this world, those who could accommodate and use the most precious treasures were not ordinary people. What made Tianmingzi even more surprised was that Luo Qingtong was actually born with the mixed yuan body. In his words, with this physique, Luo Qingtong could practice any cultivation method and power in this world without any restrictions or hindrances. Luo Qingtong was in so much pain that she did not have the energy to refute him. She was like this in her previous life. No matter what she practiced, she could master it in an instant. Hindrance, what was that? Could it be that her soul had transmigrated to another world, so her physique from her previous life was also brought along? Luo Qingtong remembered that the previous Luo Qingtong's talent was not so powerful. She was only slightly stronger than ordinary people. This was also one of the worries of the original owner. She always felt that her talent was not worthy of Yuan Ma. All along, no matter how much the Tianyu royal family disliked her, they did not say a word. If she had this physique, Yuan Ma would not be a genius. He would have been suppressed by the original owner long ago. While Luo Qingtong was being cleansed by the 2 treasures in the underground palace, the Luo family was putting on a show of forcing the emperor to abdicate. Bastard! What is the meaning of this? Qingtong's body hasn't been found yet. What right do you have to say that she's dead? He even wanted to take everything away from her. Let me tell you. Dream on. Old Master Luo slapped his chair and stood up in anger. He glared at the people kneeling in front of him with bloodshot eyes. He wanted nothing more than to kick them all to death. The 9 Magi Mountain had undergone a great change and Qingtong's fate was unknown. Instead of searching for her, they were kneeling here and begging him to clear Luo Xingning's name and make her the rightful successor of the Luo family. He even wanted him to hand over the things that belonged to Qingtong. How dare they? Grandfather Luo was furious. When he looked at Luo Feihong and Luo Xingning with his bloodshot eyes, he wanted to eat them alive. This is impossible. Unless he saw Qingtong die with his own eyes. Otherwise he would never agree to change the successor. Luo Xingning wanted to replace Qingtong? Dream on. Grandfather Luo looked at his 3rd granddaughter coldly. This granddaughter of his was very obedient in front of him. But what was Grandfather Luo's eyesight? He could easily see the perfunctory and ambition in her eyes. Now that Luo Qingtong was in trouble, Luo Xingning could not wait to cause trouble. Did she really think that he was blind? Luo Xingning was very calm in the face of Grandfather Luo's furious gaze. Since she dared to do this, she was not afraid of Grandfather Luo's revenge. Besides, did he have any evidence? Chapter 47. Grandpa, you've heard about the great changes in the 9 Magi Mountain. If Big Sister breaks through there, she won't be able to survive. She looked at Grandpa Luo and tried to persuade him. I know you love elder sister, but this is the truth. You can't ignore it just because you don't want to. I also know that my father and uncles are very unreasonable in their actions. But Her eyelashes trembled as she looked at the old man. Her throat seemed to be choking as she said, "For the future of the Luo family, we have no choice but to do this." "That's right." Luo Xining's words seemed to have opened a way for everyone to take a breather in the face of Elder Luo's pressure. These people felt that they were wrong before, but after hearing Luo Xining's words, they immediately straightened their backs. They weren't doing this for their own selfish reasons, but for the greater good of the Luo family. "Father." The fifth son of the Luo family knelt on the ground and said to Elder Luo, "Xingtong is dead. She can't be alive after breaking through in the Nine Magi Mountain. Don't be stubborn. Compared to her, the future of the Luo family is more important." "Yes, Father." The eighth son of the Luo family also knelt and kowtowed. "I know you think we're unfilial and don't have any kinship, but Xingtong is gone now. The marriage with the royal family of Tianyu is definitely not going to happen. But we still have Ning. Ning is not weaker than Xingtong. Now Xingtong is gone. Our Luo family can only rely on Ning. Father, have you forgotten the situation of our Luo family in the eastern border state? All these years, because of the marriage with the royal family of Tianyu, the royal family of Eastern Border Empire has always pampered us. Now that last Xingtong was gone. If we don't have someone who can support the family, our Luo family will be in big trouble in the future. At this time, only by helping Ning can our Luo family have a chance in the future. Father, give Ning the Luo family's heirloom armor and the recommendation letter from the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin. Father, please think for the Luo family." The second son of the Luo family also rushed forward. "Get lost." Elder Luo was so angry that his whole body trembled. He raised his foot and kicked Luo away. "The Luo clan. Do you still remember? If it weren't for the two of them, the Luo clan would have been wiped out long ago. Since when did you have the right to covet Xingtong's things?" The family heirloom armor was something that Boss risked his life to obtain for the Luo clan. And that recommendation letter. It was given to Xingtong by Tianyu's royal family. Why do you want it? That's all I have to say today. Not to mention that Xingtong's body hadn't been found yet, even if it was. No one was allowed to touch what belonged to her. Whoever dares to reach out, I will chop off their claws. If any one of you dares to say another word here today, I will beat him to death right here. Just pretend that there's no such person in the Luo family. Grandfather Luo's harsh words stunned everyone. They hadn't expected that the old man would protect Luo Xingtong to this extent. Wasn't she just a little girl? The two of them hadn't been around for so many years. How could the old man still protect her like she was the apple of his eye? He wouldn't let go even if he died. The group of people didn't dare to say a word. Luo Xining's fingernails dug into her palms. Suddenly she sneered. "I'm afraid it's not up to you now, grandfather." Luo Xining raised her head and looked into grandfather Luo's furious face. She said sarcastically, "The fifth prince already knows about this. Since eldest sister is dead, the engagement with the royal family of Tianyu is naturally cancelled. Grandfather, if I go to the royal family of Tianyu and tell them that you don't want to admit eldest sister's death and want a dead person to marry the fifth prince, what do you think they will do? Of course they would defame the dead Luo Xingtong and cancel the engagement once and for all." Chapter 48. It took Luo Xingtong 3 days to refine the two treasures. Under the baptism of the aura of the two treasures, her body constitution was completely enlightened. At this moment, Luo Xingtong's meridians were all unblocked. This was the body constitution of a martial artist who had reached the martial king realm. After reaching the martial king realm, the meridians of a martial artist's body were opened, and the profound qi flowed endlessly, forming a natural cycle. Any cultivation method or martial arts technique below the king realm would not be exhausted. The martial king realm was an important watershed for a martial artist's cultivation. It was the huge difference between the acquired and the congenital. A martial king realm expert could slaughter all the experts below the martial king realm in a whole country. At that realm, the number of people was meaningless. Without the loss of strength, it meant that a martial king realm expert was a perpetual killing machine. Unless it was a martial king realm expert, no one could resist it. At this moment, Luo Xingtong was only a martial master, but she already had the body constitution of a martial king realm expert. Any cultivation method or martial arts technique below the king realm would not cause her any loss of strength. Although the strength in her body was weak, it had reached the level of endless growth. If anyone knew about this, they would be so shocked that they couldn't control themselves. Luo Qingtong's innate mixed yuan body was also completely activated in this baptism. Phew. Luo Qingtong took a deep breath and opened her eyes. The strength in her body had been completely replenished, and her strength had been restored to its peak. The mental strength that had been exhausted was also replenished at this time. Swish. Luo Qingtong opened her eyes and looked around. The old man's figure had disappeared. Tian Mingzi used the last bit of his soul strength to protect her and let her go through the most painful refining process of the treasures. Without Tian Mingzi's protection, it was uncertain whether Luo Qingtong could survive. After all, the two treasures passed down from the Immortal Slayer Palace were not ordinary. Especially the life and death sword, which was close to the category of a divine weapon. Until the last moment, Tian Mingzi did not ask anything of Luo Qingtong. Just like what he had said to Luo Qingtong before, he did not ask Luo Qingtong to do anything. He only wanted her to live well and protect the inheritance of the Immortal Slayer Palace. Little girl, I'm sorry. I cheated you this time. Just take pity on this old man. When Tian Mingzi finally dissipated, his entire soul became exceptionally clear and cheerful. It was as if he had been a cute old urchin in the past. He looked at Luo Qingtong and laughed loudly. His eyes flashed with a cunning and wise light. I know that with your temperament you'll definitely repay kindness with kindness and take revenge 100 times over. But even though this old man cheated you, I also left you so many good things. Especially my sect's inscription Dao. You stinky girl, your talent in alchemy is so strong. It's impossible that you don't have any interest in the path of inscriptions, right? Ah. In addition, although I can't remove the poison in your eyes, I have left a trace of power in your eyes. When you run this trace of power, you can temporarily restore your vision, but the time is limited to 4 hours. You can only use it once a day, so you have to use it carefully. I'm leaving. Chapter 49. Luo Qingtong recalled the earnest advice in her mind. She did not know why, but she suddenly could not get angry. This stinky old man, he is really... Luo Qingtong was annoyed. He said that he did not ask for anything from her. But if she accepted the inheritance of the Immortal Slayer Palace, wouldn't it mean that she had accepted all the past grievances of the Immortal Slayer Palace? But this stinky old man said it in such a pitiful way, and he was so humble and he looked like a good master. Needless to say, he really poked at Luo Qingtong's lifeline. She was a good person, but she was amenable to coaxing and not coercion. If Tian Mingzi forced her to accept the inheritance, and she had to promise to clear the name of the Immortal Slayer Palace, Luo Qingtong would rather destroy the inheritance of the Immortal Slayer Palace than to care about him. But he was so humble and he gave her so many benefits. Although these benefits were accompanied by trouble, but in the end, every word and sentence was for her own good. Forget it. I don't blame you. Since she had accepted the inheritance, she would be the successor of the Immortal Slayer Palace. It was fine if the enemies of the Immortal Slayer Palace did not come looking for her. If they really came, she did not mind helping the stinky old man to clear the name of the Immortal Slayer Palace. If people do not offend me, I will not offend them. If people offend me, I will kill them. Let's take a look at the 9 stories exquisite pagoda and life and death sword. Luo Qingtong was very curious about the 2 treasures that Tian Mingzi risked his life to bring out. Her mind settled into her body, and she quickly found the shrunken pagoda and sword in her sea of consciousness. Needless to say, the 9 stories exquisite pagoda was a 9 stories tall pagoda. Now that it had shrunk, it looked very mini and cute. But the aura that it exuded showed that this pagoda was not an ordinary item. Luo Qingtong had seen many treasures in her previous life, but none of them gave her the same feeling as the 9 stories exquisite pagoda. It was an aura that had existed for a very long time. According to Tian Mingzi's words, the 9-story exquisite pagoda was not forged by the people of the Immortal Slayer Palace. It had always been in the Immortal Slayer Palace. Nobody knew what level of treasure it was. However, for him to treat the life and death duality sword with such caution, it was likely that the life and death duality sword was no less valuable. It was probably on the same level as a divine artifact. Little Pig's figure was nowhere to be seen. Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows and focused her mind on the 9-layer exquisite pagoda. She immediately saw the pink pig suppressed in the bottom level of the pagoda. Ayo ayo ayo. Little Pig yelled from the first floor of the tower. Countless transparent flames chased after him, burning him to the point that he was howling in pain. It had originally thought that it would be completely free without the array formation sealing it. Unexpectedly, That damned old man actually gave the inheritance of the Immortal Slayer Palace to Luo Qingtong along with the 9-layered exquisite pagoda. This 9-layered exquisite pagoda was also known as the Demon Subduing Pagoda. Trapped inside, Little Pig really wanted to cry but had no tears. That's why it's said that spinning a cocoon around oneself leads to one's own destruction. That damned old man made it sound so nice. He insisted that Luo Qingtong inherited the Immortal Slayer Palace's inheritance. Wasn't it because he had contracted that girl as his master? If it wasn't for that, how could he help Luo Qingtong refine the 9-layered exquisite pagoda with his remaining soul? None of the previous sage sects had the ability to do so. What a humph. It had dug its own grave. Luo Qingtong coldly snorted when she saw Little Pig howling in pain. She decisively shifted her gaze away. It was this stupid pig that caused her to take on such a big trouble. It deserved to be taught a lesson. I'll let it enjoy itself in there, Luo Qingtong thought. She withdrew her mind from the 9-layered exquisite pagoda and looked at the life and death duality sword floating on the other side. Chapter 50. The sword of life and death was 7 feet long, and its body was black and white. Luo Qingtong could see clearly that its 2 blades were shining with 2 different lights. One was black and the other was white. They were intertwined with each other. Luo Qingtong looked at it, narrowed her eyes and suddenly raised her hand. With a swish, the sword of life and death disappeared from her sea of consciousness in an instant and appeared in her hand. With the long sword in her hand, Luo Qingtong instantly felt a cool feeling all over her body. It went straight up her palm. The way to use the sword naturally appeared in her mind. Crack. With a soft sound, Luo Qingtong pressed her finger. The long sword in her hand instantly changed into a form. The silver-white long sword hummed faintly. It was the state of the life blade. Rays of silver-white light lingered around the long sword, giving people a feeling of exuberant vitality and interest. Luo Qingtong looked at the life blade. The next second, she raised her hand and slashed her wrist. With just a slight movement, a blood mark appeared on her wrist in an instant. With the appearance of the blood mark, her body and even soul weakened in an instant. Something seemed to be flowing out from the wound opened by the life blade. With a buzz, Luo Qingtong's mind became dizzy for a moment. However, it quickly stabilized in an instant. The things that he had lost before had been replenished by the raw blade in his hand. Luo Qingtong felt that this was because the sword of life and death belonged to her. That was why it didn't hurt her, its master. The essence, qi and spirit that she had lost were replenished at once. If it were another enemy, the other party wouldn't be so lucky. Good. Luo Qingtong shouted softly. The smile on her lips was enchanting and wanton. There seemed to be a bloody light in her empty eyes. What a powerful ability to absorb and replenish. Absorbing the strength of others to replenish her own consumption? It was indeed worthy of the name of the life blade. With the effect of this life blade, no matter who Luo Qingtong fought in the future, she would have a certain advantage. What about the effects of Death Blade? The thoughts in Luo Qingtong's mind changed, and the long sword in her hand also changed its state in an instant. A long sword appeared in her hand. Even the shape of the sword hilt had changed. If it was said that the previous life blade gave Luo Qingtong a feeling that it was full of vitality and contained infinite vitality, then this life blade gave Luo Qingtong a feeling of extreme vitality. This death blade gave Luo Qingtong a feeling of extreme thirst for slaughter and blood. This time Luo Qingtong did not experiment with her own body. Whoosh! She slashed out with her sword, and the body of the sword carried a black aura. In an instant, a fan-shaped sword wind swept out and left a deep mark on a beam 100 meters in front of him. Sword Qi. This was the external release of Qi that only a martial artist who had reached the Xiantian realm and become a martial king could possess. And Luo Qingtong used the life and death sword to do it easily. However, when the sword wind swept out, the strength in Luo Qingtong's body was instantly depleted. Obviously, the strength in her body was not enough to support her continuous external release of sword Qi. Even so, Luo Qingtong was very satisfied. This life and death sword is indeed a good treasure. No wonder the enemies of the Immortal Slayer Palace would rather destroy this holy ground to obtain it. However, it was obvious that those people did not succeed even after trying their best. Otherwise, this life and death sword would not be in her hands. Alright. Now we can return to the Luo family in Windgaze City. Luo Qingtong put away the life and death sword and sneered. She wanted to see how that scheming bitch Luo Xining would torment herself after causing the death of the original owner. Don't disappoint her too much. With a whoosh, Luo Qingtong's figure directly swept out of the underground palace of the Immortal Slayer Palace. Chapter 51. Rumble. Luo Qingtong's expression did not change as she listened to the continuous collapsing sounds behind her. Her eyes were dark red as she continued to move upwards. In an instant she had rushed out of the ground. Bam! She was not at the peak of the Nine-Witch Mountain range. That was right. The appearance of the Immortal Slayer Palace had caused such a huge commotion. Perhaps there were still experts searching for her there. Unless Tian Mingzi was a fool, he would not leave her there. Wouldn't he be waiting for her to receive the inheritance and then be captured by others? Luo Qingtong looked around carefully and realized that she was still in the Nine-Witch Mountain. Furthermore, she was not far from the place where she had been attacked and fell into the crack. Apparently, the ruins of the Immortal Slayer Palace on the peak of the mountain was just a mirage that looked good. The real inheritance of the Immortal Slayer Palace was actually in the underground palace. That stinky old man was quite careful. Luo Qingtong thought of the young man that she had left behind when she was escaping. She did not know if he was still there. The Nine-Witch Mountain range was in a mess. Although the place that she had chosen in haste was hidden, it would not be able to hold so many people roaming around. Luo Qingtong thought for a while and decided to take a look. What if that young man was still there? If he was, she would bring him back to Wengai's city. If he was not, then forget it. Life and death were predestined. She had no choice. As she thought, Luo Qingtong headed in that direction. Along the way there were shocking scenes everywhere. There was blood stains every 3 steps and corpses every 10 steps. Just as Xuanhuan had said, those who had come to the Nine-Witch Mountain in search of opportunity started to panic when they realized that they could not obtain the inheritance of the Immortal Slayer Palace. Someone took the opportunity to kill people and steal their treasures. These few days the Nine-Witch Mountain range was in chaos. However, there were some areas that those people did not dare to enter. One of them was the place where Yi Qianxian and the divine sky-connecting beast were fighting. The place where the man and the beast fought was filled with an energy vortex that did not dissipate for a long time. Anyone who was close enough would be immediately torn to shreds by the remnant energy if their cultivation base was not strong enough. Luo Qingtong glanced at it and recognized that it was the aura of the divine connecting beast. She was shocked. That man was indeed terrifyingly powerful. He actually fought with the heaven-connecting divine beast to such an extent? And looking at the extension of this area, it was obvious that he had the upper hand. The aura of the divine sky-connecting beast retreated. Oh my god. Was he still human? Luo Qingtong thought of the scene where she pressed him down by the healing spring water to brew the sauce. Suddenly she felt a chill in her heart. Fortunately he couldn't move at that time. Otherwise he would be dead for sure. The next time I see that man I must stay far away from him. Luo Qingtong thought about how she had lured the heaven-connecting divine beast to the other party. It was too bold. Fortunately, the heaven-connecting divine beast was holding him back. Thinking of this, she patted her chest, feeling a lingering fear. They soon arrived at their destination. Luo Qingtong glanced at the place where she had put the youth down. She saw that the fallen leaves and branches there had been removed. She looked around carefully and found that the traces in the surroundings were not messy. In fact, they were very careful. The fallen leaves and branches had been gently removed to one side. It was obvious that the person who had come knew the youth and was very familiar with him. He was on his side. Not an enemy. Since that was the case, it was fine. At least she had not caused his death. After making sure that the youth was fine, Luo Qingtong turned around and prepared to leave. At this moment, a faint and weak roar came from not far in front of them. This voice. Luo Qingtong suddenly raised her head and looked in that direction. Chapter 52. Whoosh. Luo Qingtong's figure flashed and appeared at the edge of a cliff in an instant. She took a closer look and realized that this cliff was not natural, but was forcibly cut off by something. That divine sky-connecting beast was below? Luo Qingtong pondered for a moment and then decided to go down. That divine sky-connecting beast's voice was very weak and was no longer a threat to her. And if she did not hear wrongly, the other party's situation was special. She would definitely be able to obtain a huge amount of benefits if she went down. She would be a bastard if she did not take advantage of it. Luo Qingtong decisively leaped down the cliff. That cliff was close to 10,000 feet high. She did not know what kind of force was used to create such a terrifying height. Luo Qingtong thought of the man who was locked in battle with the divine sky-connecting beast and suddenly felt her scalp tingle. She had jumped down in a moment of hot-headedness. Only now did she think of that man. Could he also be below the cliff at this moment? What she was afraid of really came true. Luo Qingtong had just thought of this when she saw a flash of silver at the bottom of the cliff. On a huge piece of empty land that had been artificially cleared, a man was lying on the ground with his eyes tightly closed. He was dressed in silver and his black hair was scattered all around like entangled seaweed in the deep sea. His dashing eyebrows and starry eyes complemented the man's handsome face even more. It was as if looking at him would be blasphemous. This was the first time Luo Qingtong saw the man's face clearly. Previously, Yi Qianxin's face was always hidden behind a thin layer of mist, so no matter how Luo Qingtong used her eye technique, she could not see it clearly. Now that she finally saw it, it was under such circumstances. Luo Qingtong stepped on the cliff, reducing the acceleration caused by the fall layer by layer. The closer she got, the more she could feel the man's imposing aura and extraordinary handsomeness. It was as if a peerless god had fallen from the sky and was sleeping at the bottom of this cliff. But only Luo Qingtong knew that this man was a person. His face was flawless, so perfect that it was as if he had walked out of a legend that was praised by the world. His peerless appearance was cold, handsome, and indescribably handsome. Luo Qingtong didn't even know how to comment. Coming from the 24th century, Luo Qingtong didn't expect that one day, there would be a man who was so handsome that she didn't even know how to describe him. There was only one person in this world. This was the only thing she could think of. Shua. Luo Qingtong landed beside the man and saw that the ground beneath him had been dyed red with blood. Strangely enough, there wasn't a single wound on the man's body. Where did the blood come from? Could it be that the wound was inside his clothes? Luo Qingtong thought and lifted her hand to open the man's lapel. His exposed chest was as white as jade, and every inch of his skin was like jade, shining with a cold jade light. However, he didn't appear thin and weak. His chest and abdominal muscles were all there. And they were very strong and strong. The touch was also very good. What a monster, Luo Qingtong muttered in her heart, but her eyes looked at the man openly. Anyway, it wasn't the first time she had seen him. What was there to be afraid of? However, there wasn't a single wound on the man's body. Where was the problem? Could it be inside his body? As Luo Qingtong thought about it, she held the man's wrist and transferred her energy into it. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.